Good morning. I'm Dr. Wilson Pearl, Associate Professor, Department of Corporate Secretaryship of KCS Kasnada College of Arts and Science. Now we are going to see the profitability ratios. There are so many profitability ratios are there. We'll be seeing one by one now. We'll see first one, gross profit ratio. The formula for that you already studied in plus 2. Gross profit by net sales into 100. For gross profit, you know how to do the gross profit. Sales minus cost of goods sold is gross profit. The net sales is nothing but sales minus sales return. So that will be your net sales. Next, gross net profit ratio. Net profit ratio is nothing but net profit divided by net sales again into 100. Operating profit ratio. For operating profit ratio, the formula will be operating profit divided by net sales into 100. For finding what is operating profit, the formula is given here in the last few lines. Operating profit is equal to net profit add non-operating expenses minus non-operating income. The list of non-operating expenses is also given below that. Finance expenses, interest on loan, loss on sale, provision for income tax, etc. So these are your non-operating expenses. The same way the non-operating income, few non-operating incomes is given below that. Profit on sale of asset, income from investment, dividend received, interest on government securities, etc. So these are your non-operating incomes and non-operating expenses. So, operating profit is nothing but net profit add non-operating expenses minus non-operating income. So that will be taken as a operating profit. Next, operating ratio. For operating ratio, cost of goods sold plus operating expenses. I know my cost of goods sold, sales minus GP. Operating expenses, I know what are the operating expenses other than non-operating expenses. Any expenses other than non-operating expenses are operating expenses divided by net sales into 100. Then expenses ratio. For that matter, any expense it can be. It can be interest charges, which means interest ratio. Interest ratio, finance ratio is called as interest divided by net sales into 100. If it's distribution expenses, you will say distribution expenses by net sales into 100. If it is advertisement expenses, you will say advertisement expenses by net sales into 100. If it is salary expenses, you will say salary expenses by net sales into 100. So any specific expenses they ask you to do, you do that. You take as a numerator, then divide that by net sales into 100. That will be your expenses ratio. Then return on investment. The formula for that is operating profit again. You know how to find operating profit. We've already done there. So divided by capital employed. Capital employed, I told you, it is shareholders fund into 100. Then return on shareholders fund. Net profit after interest and tax divided by shareholders fund into 100. Then return on equity shareholders fund, which means net profit after interest, tax and preferred dividend divided by net equity shareholders fund. Then return on total assets, net profit after tax plus interest divided by total asset minus fictitious asset, okay, into 100 again. Then earnings per share, net profit after tax and preference dividend divided by number of equity shares. So this is one particular thing you should note here from the beginning. From the first formula, everything you multiply by 100. The last one alone, the last earnings per share alone, you will multiply by 100. The rest, every formula you will multiply by 100. Okay, so that is the difference here. We'll go to the next slide now. We'll see some sums now. Here, so the formula asks you to find gross profit ratio. What is the formula for gross profit ratio? You already know. So you have to find the gross profit by preparing the trading account. So you write the gross profit ratio first, formula, then you prepare the trading account, opening stock, closing. So you know how to prepare the trading account. It is shown as it is here in the slide. Then once you find the gross profit, you divide by net sales into 100 will give you gross profit ratio. Is it clear? These are something which you are already done in plus 2. Okay. Next. Now you are going to find what is net profit ratio. Now the sales minus cost of goods sold is gross profit, and gross profit minus administrative expense and selling expense will give you net profit. That is what is given here. And the answer C, sales minus cost of goods sold minus administrative minus selling. Minus everything from the sales will give you final answer is net profit. So net profit by net sales into 100 is net profit ratio. Okay. Next one you are asked to find the again net profit ratio. So you have given sales minus sales return, gross profit is there. Then income from investment, which means it should be on the credit side of your P&L account, not on the debit side. Income means it should fall on the credit side of your P&L account. Loss on sale, operating expenses, provisional. These are the debit side expenses. So you'll start from the gross profit. You prepare only the P&L because we need only net profit, not gross profit. Okay, gross profit is already given there. 3 lakh on the credit side, income from investment credit side, then rest everything, the operating expenses, loss on sale, provision for tax, everything on the debit side. The final answer will be a net profit. So once you know the net profit, you can find your formula. Net profit by sales into 100. Net sales for that matter. Okay, so that is the reason for giving net sales written over there. So 5 lakh 40 minus 40 is 5 lakh. So 140 by 5 lakh into 100 will give you 28%. That is your net profit ratio. Okay, next sum. Next, you are asked to find the following expenses ratio. That is operating profit ratio, expenses ratio, operating profit ratio, operating ratio, then gross profit ratio and net profit ratio. So these are 5 ratios you have to find. First, we can start with anything. You can start with the operating ratio itself. Operating ratio, you know the formula. Cost of goods sold plus operating expenses divided by net sales in 100. So you know what is the cost of goods sold here. It is clearly given here. It's 3,50,000 operating cost of goods sold. Then add. What you're going to add? Add operating expenses. So the list of operating expenses given here. The 3 items are there. So when you add all the 3, you'll get your operating expenses. So cost of goods sold, add operating expenses divided by net sale is also given here. 8 lakh. Okay, that will be your operating ratio. Then expenses ratio. You can start with administrative expense ratio. You can start with selling expense ratio, distribution expense ratio, finance expense ratio, anything. What I told you, if they ask you for expenses ratio, you take that particular expense as a numerator. Okay, the sales will be the divider. So 40,000 here. If you're going to find administrative expense ratio, the formula will be administrative expenses by net sales into 100. Okay, for the answer for that will be 40,000 by 8 lakh into 100. If it is selling expense ratio, 60,000 by 8 lakh into 100. If it is distribution expense ratio, 20,000 by 8 lakh into 100. If it is finance expense ratio, it will be 30,000 by 8 lakh into 100. So that is the formula you will create for any particular expenses. Okay, then operating profit ratio. You know operating profit ratio already. What is the formula for operating profit ratio? You have to find operating profit first. Okay, for finding operating profit, what do you do? Take net profit, add non-operating expenses, which is given here, and minus your non-operating income, which is given here. The income from investment is non-operating income. So you add these 3 and minus 1 will give you operating profit. So divided by net sales into 100. Then net profit ratio, it is already there. Net profit is given there, 3 lakh. So 3 lakh by 8 lakh into 100. Okay, so that is the answer. You can see in the next slide. So look here, operating ratio, cost of sale and operating expenses by net sales. Okay, you got the answer. Now, even administrative expenses, I told you, no, if they ask you to find any particular expense ratio, you take that as a numerator, divide by net sales into 100. Okay, next slide. Here you're going to find selling expense by net sales. Then distribution expense by net sales. Then finance expense by net sales. See, all expenses on the numerator on the top, net sale will be a divider into 100. Okay, will give you the percentage. Then operating profit ratio. You know operating profit, gross profit, add operating expenses minus non-operating income will give you operating profit. That is 330 by net sales into 100. Then gross profit is already there. Okay, such an easy one. These types of sums may be asked for 10 marks also. Next slide. In this sum, they gave you the details, the particulars about the P&L account. They didn't give you P&L account, which means you have to prepare the P&L account, then do the sum. Okay, you have to find the trading and P&L together. After that only you can find a gross profit, then net profit, then operating profit ratio, then operating expenses, operating ratio. Okay, so it is not a P&L account. See, it is given as a statement, left hand side, and it is continued in the right hand side. Okay, it's not a debit credit, nothing is like that here. Okay, there's no debit, there's no credit. Okay, so next slide you'll see the answer by preparing trading and P&L. See, they prepare the trading. So by preparing trading, I found gross profit, then final net profit here. But they have done in 2 P&L. One is using operating expenses, another one using non-operating expenses. You can do it together. We can do these 2 together. We don't need to have 29,000 total here. Without that, we can do both of them together also. Okay. So the answers will be in the next slide. Gross profit by net sales, operating profit by net sales, operating expenses, cost of sales plus operating. So only we should memorize the formula first. Without memorizing formula, you can't do the sum. Okay, you have to memorize each and every formula. Only then you can do the sum easily. Without knowing the formula, how can you do the sum? Okay, so that's it. So that is your answer here. Next. These are some sums which is with the balance sheet I given you for your practice. You can do that as well as a homework also. You can take it up. We'll see in the next slide.